Okay, so now we're creating a REST API that helps us to create a user, update a user, delete a user, and get a user. So we are creating a CRUD application. We are creating a REST application. So what we want to do now is let's go into our index.js. So in our index.js, I added some things already, like this app.useJSON. So I'm going to tell you what this is going to do. I'm going to remove it for now. I'm going to remove some things that are not here before. Then I'm going to all set it up from the beginning. Yeah, let me remove this. This was not also here. So this was our basic project folder. So now this is our file. This is what we had before. Now let's dive in and start using start doing it. So what we need to do now is I need to go to my controller file first and create a file called user controller.js. So there I'll do my logic. Then in the model I will use I'll create something called user. Okay, let me make it in capital letter. So just user.js. Then in my router, I want to create something like user router or user routes. Let me make it user routes.js. So user routes.js. So I have these files already created. Now let's start doing something with them. So let's go into the controller first. Now in the controller, I want to do some basic things. So I want to do something like get all users. Sorry, get all users. So I also want to do get single user, and I want to do get new user, and I also want to do update or edit user, and I want to do a delete user. So I want to do a delete user. So what I'm going to start with now is I'm going to start with getting all users. So let me do something. Let me go to my model and just put users. So users is equals to an empty array. So I'm going to do something to make this. I'm going to use the exports. Now, this export helps me to make my code available in other places. So why are we using it? The essence of using it is that as we continue writing our code keeps getting larger and larger and larger. So we need to break them down into modules. So yeah, and when breaking them down into modules, we need to use the import and the export, which we are going to look into now. So unfortunately, we cannot use imports and the exports in ES6, but we can do this kind of exports. And to import it, we use something like require. So we use something like require to get this. So what we'll do now is we go back to our controller, and we just try to get that file. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to call it out here. So I'm going to say const users is equals to require. So I'm going to require from model and user. Is this correct? Okay, this is not correct. So I need to add one more dot. Yes, and now this is correct. So let's highlight over it. Yeah, this is correct. So now what we want to do now is we want to use the export also because we are going to be sending it out from here. So I'm going to call it users. So I'm going to call it users, or let me make it more get users. So get users now. Let's make it a async function. So I want to use an arrow function, async function. So I have the request and the response. Then I'm going to be having I'm going to have this now. Let me use my try and catch. So the reason I'm using try and catch is I want to get error, and I want to also send out my response. So I'm going to let go of this. So now let's correct what we have here. So We have, so what we have here is const users is equals to await user. We're not going to use find here. I'm going to use find. So I'm going to use find. So const users. So const users. Now then we just output the user. So we don't need this await here. We don't need this await for now. So now I want to introduce something. Whenever we are sending out a response, we should always send out the status code. So a status code is something that lets us know if the process was successful or if it failed. So I'm going to also do that here. I'm going to do res.status, res.status. Then I'm going to output a for if it is not found. So if it is not found issue, or if you have a server error, you should get 500. So let me just make it 500. So it's telling us that there's something wrong with our own code. So you can use 400 or 404. If not found, then 500 is error code talking about server error. So now let's check out what we have. So let's test this out by creating something called REST client. So I've already created this file. Let me delete it. I want to do everything from scratch so that we can see what we are doing. So what I'll do is there's a VS Code extension we called the REST client. So let's take a look at that market. So this is it, REST client. So you can only install it. So when you install this, you will not need to use Postman, although you might still want to use Postman. If you want to use Postman, you can go ahead and use Postman. But I actually like working in just one environment. So the REST client is a very nice tool. So you can look at it. That's examples of how to use it. And like, I'm also going to be using it, so you're going to see how to use it. So the first thing you do is you create a file with the .rest. So I'm going to call this, let me call this user or .rest. So user.rest. So that's the name of the file I've created. Let me just close out some things I don't need here. So in user.rest, there are different ways we can do things. So first of all, I want to have the URL so that I can use it for many instead of writing it out many times. So at URL, use at URL to define a variable. Yeah, then you say at localhost, then local should be port 3000. So we are not doing API yet. So, so we are not doing API. I mean, we are not doing versioning for now. So now let's go and do the get. So the get, we just make sure this is inside a double curly brace. So it's going to access it. And don't forget, all we need to do now is just add user. We're going to see how we're going to do that later. So now let's go back into our index.js and just fix some things. But before going there, let's go into our router. I don't think we've done anything in the router. So in the router, we're going to first create our router. So to create a router, let's call this router equals to require express.router. Then we can do our router.get. Just put the slash to the path. Then we want to call a handler. The handler we have not even called in. So from the we're going to create it now. So I think it should be get users. Get users. So now let's go and do that. Let's go into our controller and do that. Okay, yes, get user, that's correct. So all we need to do now is we just need to import it into the router file. So to import that, just do const controller equals to require. I'm making a mistake require today. So require the controller dot okay, when the double dot controller slash user controller. So user controller. So now this is imported already. So we can see that we can access what we have. So if I click on uh, go to definition, it's going to take me to this file. So that means it is properly linked. So that's another way to know that the file is linked. You can always use that, or just use the control, press down control and just click on it, which is also going to take it there. So let's test out what we have now. Let's test out what we have. So, oh, we got an error saying that the connection was rejected. Either the service isn't running. So, okay, we've not, our server is on, so that shouldn't be a problem. Our server is on. Or let's do something. Let's restart our server. Let's restart our server. So let me just do npm start. So npm start. So it's serving on. Oh, I did npm start instead of dev. Okay, no problem. So okay, still same error. So let me change back to dev. Let me just tell this npm. Okay. So I think I know where the problem is. We have not properly linked our file. I think that's why. So let me go into the index.js and bring this in. So inside the index.js, let me bring in the router. So user, let's call the name of the router. User is equals to require. So I think we need the router then slash user routes. So we have the user route now. So let us now try to use it. So we say app.use app.use use let's call this user. Let's call this user and user. Yes, user and user. So at the part of user, we're going to get this route. So this is the route that we have passed there. Now I think that is all. Now we have an error. We're getting an error saying router does require a middleware function but got an object. So that should be probably because we are not exporting it. So now let's export that. Let's use module dot exports is equals to router. So now that error should be gone. So yeah, so that's fine. So now let's go back to our REST and check this out. Okay, so now let's run this again. You see getting this, either it is not running. Okay, let me do something. So at this route, we are getting this zero training. So where this zero training comes from? This zero training is what we are sending out here, this request. So at the slash part, we are getting this. So let's go back into our folder and fix up things. Why are we not getting the slash? Why are we not getting the slash user? So let me just add slash user here and see what's happening. So slash user. Okay, now it's worked. Probably we are doing it in the wrong way before. So let's just continue doing what we are doing. So we get an empty user object. So an empty user object. So I would like to also customize the results. So to customize the results, let's go back to our user. Let's go back to our user. Let's go back to our user controller and just do some message customization. So like inside of this place, let's just add a message all user, and then we can now just call out our users. So that way it is fine. So we're going to get everything. Error message. Okay, this is fine. So now let's test it out again. Let's test it out again. So all user, and let's test it out again. So we get all users, and we get the users is a user. So it's going to give us the user object. So that is definitely fine. That's very fine. So we're okay with that. So that's working. Now let's go and do the let's work on the gets on the post. Yeah, let's work on the post. So let's work on creating the user. So let's work on creating the user. We'll do the get user later on. So we just do export create user again, and just go and try and catch. So doing this, and so what I want to do now is we want to do user dot, I think it's users, yes, users dot push, users dot push user. So I want to just take out this and just bring in this. So user dot push user. Let me quickly fix this error that is coming out. So so okay, we need to close it up. So so that error is gone now. So what I want to do now is, when creating this, we use user is equals to user dot push user. But before doing this, we first need to get our user itself. So how to get our user? We say request dot body. So when we say request dot body, we're able to get our information, the information that we passed in into the body. So what we now get in the body is what we push into the user. So let's just call this const. Okay, let me use this new user, and I'll just say you can also use this, but I prefer to use users dot push users dot push. So user dot push. So when I use user dot push, it's going to push the results into this user model. So let's look at it. So user model. So now I want to, when this is successful, now before we can have a success, let's add an await here, because it's coming from a request and might take time. So let's await it and make sure that we don't get just an empty result. So what I want to do now is I want to send a response of 201, saying that it is true. So let's really create, so user created, then send out the new user. So sending out the new user. So send out the new user. So send out this response. So now let's go and give it a route. So we'll go into the router folder, then the route, in the user router or the user route, we add post method. So we still want it to be ordinary slash, then we add controller dot create user. So this create user, to validate that is correct, you can see it's showing us that it exists because we have already exported it. So now let's go and test that out again in our post command. So to do this, we're going to come under this get and write 3 hash, 3 hash. So okay, 3 hash. Then we're going to add let's say post. Let's write post this time. Now in this post, I'm going to add http equals 3000 so slash user. Then in this header, all we're going to do here is we're going to add content type. So content type should be application.json. And what we want to add here is the contents. Content we want to add. The content represent this curly brace I have here, this object curly brace I have here represents what we want to put. So name, then John at example.com. So let's also add the password for him. and that's fine. So let's stop there. So now let's try to send this request and see what happens. So sending this request now, let's see what happens. Like getting message and error. Okay, let's check our controller and see what we're getting. Okay, message is an error. So it's not showing us the error type. Okay, message. So let's try that again and see our response. So user.push is not a function. So let's go. So that's where our problem is. So we'll go back into the user controller. So let's look at where that is. Imports new user, then pushing this new user. So users. So we got a request from the body. So after getting a request from the body, we created a new variable and recording the imported user model, and we pushed this into it. So let me look at the user model. This is the user's model. Okay, that is correct. So that's correct. Now let's look at what we have here. Okay, let's do something. Let's move this line. Yeah, I've seen where the errors. So let's push this, and what we need to return here is the user. Let's just return the user. Yeah. So since we are returning user, we don't need to do this again. Just put ordinary user. Same thing as putting a colon and the user again. So this is the fix. So let's test it out now. So let's go back into our user at rest and we run this. We're still getting same error. So let's try that out again. User.push is not a function. Okay, so let's debug that and find out the solution to that. So let's go back into our user model. Oh, I see. Okay, this is where the error is. Now let's go into our model. Now, this is how I'm getting that error is because we use export. So if I'm to use this, what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to destructure it here. I'm supposed to destructure that user. I wonder how it worked for this other one, for the gate. So I'm supposed to destructure it. So when I destructure it, it's going to work fine. So that's why I'm getting that error. So now let's test it out again. So let's test it out. User created, yeah, very fine. So let's test the get also. So getting none. Yeah, this is the correct thing. Yeah, this is the correct thing. Yeah, so that was a mistake. So let's just continue. This one, don't need to have many hash. Just have three. When you have three, you're fine. So now we notice that anytime we do this post, we are not getting the data. We're not getting any data. So this one we're not getting the return data is because we need to do something in our index.js file. And what we need to do is we need to bring in something that will pass JSON for us. So that will pass in JSON request for us. So to do that, we have to bring in something called JSON. Yeah, before we have to do something like install body parser, but now that's available in Express. We just call in, we just have to destructure it from Express. So we just say this equals to require Express again. So require Express. So when we require Express, all we do is we just bring out what we need from Express. So this is already available in Express. So the JSON, then we just come under here and say add.use JSON. So add.use JSON. So this is the fix. So now let's test it out again. So let's test it out again. See if we get our result because it has been able to pass in the body request. What's the body request? This part, this line 21 that says await request.user. So we are able to pass in JSON request. So to pass JSON, we need to use need to call in this particular file. So if you are not getting any result, that's because you are not calling the JSON. So that JSON is like a body parser installed or available in Express. Don't forget, we talk about middleware. That Express uses middleware, different middleware. So one of the middleware inside Express that we're just using now, one of the middleware function is this JSON. So we have been able to get data and also to create data. So we are going to create data. So let's do one more test. So let's get user. So when we get user now, you see, we can get John. So if I had another user, let me change this to Jane. So let me just change to Jane and send. Then also get, so I get two data. So that's the way to add and to get. So what I want to do now is we need to add an ID. We need to add an ID to identify them and probably add date that they were created. So to do that, let's just clean up this. So let's clean up this and go into now I want us to do something. Don't like the idea of writing all this into the controller. So I'm going to be breaking this code, or yeah, let's leave it like this. Since we are not using a database, let's leave it like this. Then in later class we'll get into that. So the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to get a single user. So to get a single user, that is not difficult. You can just use the index together. So to do that, you can just say export dot get user. So the other one is get users. So this one is going to be get user. So async, I want the arrow function. So async is wrong. What's wrong with me today? So my async, like I don't know how to spell again. So the async function. So let's just continue. So then we're going to write our try and catch. So doing this now, just need to So in my try now, what I want to do is I want to find. So let me just const user again. Const user is equals to, I don't need that wait for this. So const user is the users. So we want to be able to do something like this. So this is not available. So this should be users. Then find the user that we're passing. So if we find a particular user where the ID is this. So to handle that, what we need to do is let's say let ID is equals to request.params.id. So request.params.id. So we'll pass in we'll pass in this. Yeah. So let's just shorten this and make this our ID. So if this is correct, we'll be sending out a request. We'll send out the status and the result. So user found, and we just call in the user. So we don't need to use user since user is user. So we are fine with that. So now don't forget we don't have user ID in our program. We don't have user ID in our program. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do something because I'm going to do something. I'm going to install a package called UUID. So to use UUID, let's stop our server and just need to do npm install UUID. So npm install UUID. So click on enter. So it's going to install UUID for us. So after UUID has been installed, we just import it here. So let's say let me call this const UUID is equals to require UUID. Yeah, UUID has different versions, so you can just say version 4. Yeah, version 4 is very recommended to use. So what we just do is anytime we are creating a new user, we want to probably destructure or get user. Okay, so let's do that in the create. So in the create, what we do is before pushing in, we'll just do something. We just call this const. So let's add user.id is equals to UID. Yes, this is what we need to do. And we are very fine. So we just do this. So user.id is equals to UID. So we have added the property of ID. So now let's run our server again and test things out. So let me just write npm get npm run get. So, so our server is up and let's add something again. So you can see that we have an ID here. So we have an ID. So we have an ID. An ID has been generated for us now. So let's do one more thing. Let me do something here. So okay, that's fine. That's fine. So that's been created for us. So let me just add another person. Let me add another person. Let me add John again. So John, and let me send that request again. So we have John. So let me look at how many. Let me now test out how many people we have. So we have 2 users, and they have different. They have the same ID. They have the same ID, which is not supposed to. This is not. They are not supposed to have the same ID. The ID is supposed to be different from each other. So let's look at how to fix that. Just give us a new ID, a new user. Okay, let me test it out again. Let me test things out again. Let me add this John. Okay, the ID is different now. The ID is different now. So let me add somebody else. Mike. So let's do this again. The ID seems to be the same, so we need to check out why we're having the same ID for everything. This is not right. So let's quickly fix that. So let me do something here. So let's say okay, let's do this. So okay, let's do this again. The UID is not a function, so that's not the reason. Okay, let's do something. Every time, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to destructure. So the structure is like me bringing out the parameter of that one. So I want to destructure the email, the the name, the password, password, password. And what I want to do now is I'm going to create a new user. So const new user is now going to be equals to ID, which is going to be our user ID. Then we're having email, we're having the name, and we're having the password. So let me just bring the name above. So what I'm going to be pushing now is this new user. So I want to push in this new user. So let me take away all these empty space that are not important. So let me just echo out new user, new user, so new user. So now let's test this out again and see what we are going to get. So let's test this out again and see what we'll be getting. So let's test this out again. Now REST client. So I'm adding Mike. Now let me add somebody else. Let me add Jane or Jack. Okay. So adding Jack here. So we are still having the same ID. Why are we having the same ID? So, same ID. Let me get out to confirm the error still persists. So we're having same ID for the three of them. Okay. Okay, let me take a look at my controller file very well. So I'm actually doing some debugging and trying to see how to fix that. So user ID. So let's save and test that out again. Let's save and test that out again. So now we don't even get any ID again. So let's look at a fix for that. Okay, let's do that once more. So now we get the ID. Now let's change the name and see what's happening. So let me change it on to Mark this time. So the ID is changing. So let me add somebody else. Let me use John. So for John now, let's see what we have. So the ID is changing. So this is good. So I'm even very happy that I came across that error. So now we have a working ID. Now let's go back and continue with our code. So now we are able to achieve three things. We are able to get a user, to get users, to get user, and to create a user. Now what we want to do now is we want to update user. So to update user, so let's continue. So let's use our try and catch. So we're going to get where the ID is, the ID, and we'll get the request from the body, and we'll update user.username to. So we have not tried out two things as of now. We have not tried out two things. So let's try out those two things. We have not tried out the get single. So it gets a single person. So I'm going to write 3 hash again, and I'm going to just do the get. So get is going to be HTTP equals 3000. It's still going to be user. Then I'm going to go into my user route folder. Now I'm going to go into my user route folder, and I'm going to just call in those routes. So let me make the get together. Now we can also chain everything together. We can chain them together since everything is on the same, the same ports. So what we can do is and say route. So let me just remove all this. So just a router. Then the next one, I don't even need to add the router. Let me just come here and say dot get ID. Yes, get user. Then to update a user, let me use put. Let's put then user update user. So the reason I'm getting these errors because of this semicolon. So I'm going to get out. So now let's test out our code. So let's test this out. Let's test this out. Let's go into our user. So let me do something. Let me get all user first. Connection was rejected. Is that isn't running? Why isn't it running? Okay, we got an error. So let's try to check out what the error is out. So we have an error. It said Where's the error coming from? Unexpected end of inputs at where line 67 in the controller. So line 67 in our controller. Oh yeah, we did not close this up. So now this is closed up. So let's check the terminal to see if everything is fine. Yeah, it's serving now. So let's go back and get our users. So we have no user. So we need to add some user now. We need to add some user. So let's create. Now let me just grab this ID. Let me grab this ID and use it to find the user. So user found. So with that ID now, I'll be able to find John. So let me add another contact. Let me add Jane this time. Jane. So send it. So Jane has a different ID. So let me get all users first. I get all user, then I'm finding a particular user. So I'm finding just this user. So if I want to find Jane also, if I want to find Jane, all I need to do is to grab her ID. So I think I created Jane twice. Wow. So to find Jane, okay, let me find this particular Jane. Let me copy the ID and replace with what I have here. So when we do a find, we should get Jane. So that's how to do that's how to find a single person. So to do a single person. Now I want to also work on updates. So to update, I'm just going to copy all this, maybe copy all this and put it here and just change this to put. I'm going to change this to put, then maybe I just want to change I want to adjust her name and put it to Mary, and also change the Jane to Mary. So let's see what we've got. So we got 404 not found. Why are we getting not found? Because we did not add the ID. So let's include the ID. No, I have to copy again from here. I have to copy it from here. Then go down and include it after this user. So let me close this up so that we see what we are doing. So we can see that this user has been updated. So now let's get all users. So get all users, get all users. So get all users. So we can see that now we have John, we have Mary, and we have Jane. So that's how to create, that's how to that's how to get, and that's how to update. So now the next thing we want to do now is we want to be able to delete, we want to be able to remove a single user. So to delete a user, so I'm just going to write export delete, then do my try and catch, then I'll catch for error, then so let's fix this. So now the way I'm going to remove a user is I'm going to use user.find, then that user, the user with the ID, and after that I'm going to use user.splice. So user.splice, what it does is it's going to help us to check the index of something, and it's going to update that particular index of an object. So the index of the object is what we want to update. So it's going to look for anything we change and it's going to update that thing that we have changed, and it's going to give us a return result. So let's test this out in our in our REST client. So I'm just going to write dot delete. You know, I make so much mistake today. Delete. So delete user. Okay, this is correct. So I have to cancel this. So always take notes. If you have a semicolon, you're always going to get an error. So if you want to have a semicolon, it's either you remove it entirely or you put it at the last one. So now we are good to go with this. You can see that we'll have done everything here inside the index.js, but because we have splitted our code has been broken down into different sections. Despite breaking it down into different sections, still look large. But in later lessons, we'll be adjusting all that and doing some new stuff. So now let's just test out what we have done again. So now let's do another one again. So this one is going to be delete. So it's going to be delete, and we're going to just delete this. We're going to delete this user. So let's try to delete this user. So let's do it now. Cannot delete user not found. Okay, let's see why that is not found. So let's go into our let's start from our controller first. We have a delete user. Let's go to our routes. Let's go to our routes. Oh, we need to add ID. You can't just delete anybody. We need to add the ID. Yeah. So after adding that, let's go back and try that again. So it said user deleted, and we can see that it did not return any user. So that shows that the user has been deleted. So now let's get this particular user not found. That's beautiful. Now let's get all user and see if it is still available. So unfortunately, all user were deleted. So I think that was because the server restarted. So because of the error we had before. So now let's do something. Let's add again. Let's add. And now let's get this user ID and let's replace it. Okay, let's take it down here and use it. Let me close up this. Let me just take it down here and replace it with this. And now let's send the request. So user deleted. So that deleted this particular user record. So let's try to get all users and see what we get. See, you can see that all users have been removed. So to test it out very well, let's change the name again. Let's add like more people. So let's add John. Let me add John. So created John. Let me add Mary. So let me also add let me add Aliyu. And let me add one more name. Let me add Chooks. So Chooks. So now let's get all our users again. So we can see that all the users we get here. Let me close out so that we can have enough space. So all the users we have here, we have John, we have Mary, we have Aliyu, and we have Chooks. So now let me delete Aliyu. So let me just come here, grab the user ID, let me delete it. So let me come down to delete it. Now to delete Aliyu and make sure that Aliyu is out of our record. So I'm going to send a request. So after sending a request, you can see that Aliyu is showing us the information of Aliyu that has been deleted. So now let's go to our get method again and let's send this and see if we get Aliyu. So user not found. No, we've even deleted that. So let's get Let's get Ali. So let's check if we have Ali. So Ali is no more in the list. So we're going to do. So now let me edit another one again. Let me edit Mary and change it to Jane. So I'm going to change Mary. But first of all, let me grab the ID. So I'm going to grab the ID of Mary. Then I'm going to replace it with, I'm going to put it here. So after putting it here, I'm going to change Mary to Jane. Jane. So I'm going to send. So Mary has been updated. So now let's check. Let's get all our users again. So getting all our users, we can see that we no longer have Mary. Instead, we have Jane. So this is how to do a simple CRUD application with Express. So I'm sure that we have covered a lot of concepts. In this tutorial. So let me just go over it. So what we have is we have the um I use GUID for the ID, and you can also use different things for the ID. So let me add one more thing. For example, I want to add dates. So to add dates, what I'll do is, so let me come down to where we create user. I want to include dates, to write created dates. So to add dates, let me just add dates. So I'll say new date to so I'm going to change this to local date string. Local date string. So I'm going to add, yes, this to local date string. Let's confirm that this method is correct. Okay, then to add time, we just do the same thing. Time to add new date dot new date dot to local time string. Then to local date string. So this is correct now. So it's local date string and local time string. Now let's do this for everything again. So let's do this for everything. So let's check out our data. So we're going to start again. That just updates. So let's do something. Let's check all our users to see if data still persists. So nothing is there. So let me add Chooks. So we're adding Chooks. Chooks is our first guy now. So we can see the time and we can see the date. So to the date, we can see it formatted out for us, and to the time, you can get it here. So that's how to add dates and time into your model. So that's the end of this tutorial. So I hope we have all learned something, and we'll be continue on this series. We'll do more recordings and add more content. So the next thing we'll be doing is we'll be using the MongoDB, using a database. So that's the next step.